you think about different things that come up. But I'll go ahead and start for now. And what I'm going to do is record this just in case there are some here that are missing, or if you want to go back later and if there's something to clarify. But right now, guys, our main objective is to start on Writer's Workshop. And the times that we're together, we'll spend time in small groups kind of doing this practice, engaging in the demonstration of Writer's Workshop, as well as, being participants in Writer's Workshop. Because again, this is one way that you will be teaching writing in your classroom. And so we want to make sure to, do this practice and understand how that process works, because that's a big piece of how students are getting motivated and creating their writing pieces throughout school. So beginning today, we're starting with Writer's Workshop. And so what we're going to do, guys, is work through the writing process in our Writer's Workshop. But you kind of already started the first pieces of what you would do in your own classroom because you participated in that writing summer camp. And so doing that writing summer camp and working through on daily and adding to your journal, you have several written pieces. That's kind of the beginning, the first step of getting into Writer's Workshop. So the beginning step for students is to basically put together different ideas, brainstorming, just coming up with things that they might want to write about. So at this point, you have several of those ideas down because you've engaged in 5 weeks of Writer's Workshop. So I'm going to share my screen real quick and take you over to what I've added just to kind of give you details on how this will look when we're from week to week when we're together. So can you see my screen now? Just a thumbs up or a little hand or something on your, okay. So this is posted. It just says Writer's Workshop. And what it does is just detailing how we're going to work through this process. And guys, jump in at any time if you have a question or put it in the chat box. I don't want to go on if there's something I need to stop and clarify. So let me let Jennifer in. So like I said, today's class will focus on the first step workshop process where you're doing brainstorming. And so in a classroom, you're forming your Writer's Workshop groups, and these might be based on, you can determine how you want to form your groups because these students do not have to be at the same level. In fact, you would want to have a mixed leveled group in order to have students be able to support one another through this process. So you would want to create your groups for Writer's Workshop very intentionally, thinking about who's included and who might support whom with regards to English language learners or students that are struggling and students that need more challenge. So really thinking about how you're going to form those Writer's Workshop groups is your first step to beginning this process. And so then you have them all in their groups, and the first thing that they're doing as writers is brainstorming or generating ideas, which is, as you know, the first step of the writing process. You have to come up with, what am I going to write about? And so together in a small group, you have different ways and different strategies of generating ideas. And what we're going to do in our workshop for brainstorming is to actually use our very helpful text to help us with generating ideas. So you guys have been able to kind of jump in and out of this book using the different strategies along with the summer camp, the writing summer camp. But today we're going to be looking at a very specific part, page 90, that begins all of the strategies on generating and collecting ideas. So there's so many different ways because, part of, a beginning piece of what I struggle with is just, what am I going to write about? So you have said when it comes to writing, you like to have choice and not to be told what you have to write about. But for some, that's a challenge to be told you can write about whatever you want to. They need to have some guidance on and support on coming up with what am I going to write about, and then working through this process helps them to create their final piece. So I love in our text, and I want to utilize this because it is such a great resource, but it's a different kind of book. So we want to make sure we understand how it works. Just like we said at the beginning, you're not reading this chapter by chapter. You're going into the places that you need to get the resources. So we're jumping to page 90. If you have your book with you, you can be looking there, because what you're about to do is get into small groups and begin brainstorming. And together you'll kind of look through these strategies, 3.1, and really it goes all the way to like 3.30 or 3.32. There's several of them. And so what you want to think about are a couple of things. You know, if you're going through your digital journal, you see the things that you've written about over the past 5 weeks. You engaged in narrative, in persuasive, in poetry, in those different genres. And so at this point, you might say, I really like poetry more than I thought I was going to. So I'm going to move forward in that genre and begin writer's workshop on a poetry piece. So 2 things you're trying to figure out today. 1, what strategy from our book are you going to use to generate your idea? And 2, what genre are you selecting to write about? And so you are, over the next several weeks, you're going to create 1 fully written piece. And so we'll work through the writing process with different things we do each time we're together. So one thing that will help you is knowing what genre you want, because then when you're looking at the strategies starting on page 90, you'll see on the side, which we've looked at before, I don't know if you can see that, on the side it tells you exactly what's the most appropriate grade level, which genre is this strategy most appropriate for. And so if you, and you see many of them fit into any genre, any of the strategies will work. But some of them are very specific. 3.7 is specific to a persuasive piece. So you want to match it up. By the end of your small group writing time, you want to know what genre will you be writing in and what strategy will you use to help you find your topic. And so when we come back together, I'm going to ask you each to tell me which of those you came up with in your small group. And the reason I asked you to have your journal ready is because that's a piece of gathering ideas, you know, for you to, you know, go through that and kind of see what did I create way back in week 1. Maybe that's the genre I want to work with, and talk to one another in your small groups about the genre you're selecting and why, and connect it back to your experience with writing camp. I'm going to do poetry because that's one that I wasn't thinking I could do. And after writing summer camp, I came up with, you know, different strategies on how to do that. So that's what I'll be working on for my full writing piece. And so at the end, we'll step by step, and by the end, you'll have a final complete written piece. But it will, you know, it's a long process, and the reason it's taking so long is because we don't meet each week. So each time we'll work through a different piece of the process in writer's workshop, just to get this experience and see how it works. Because what we want to remember is that, you know, as teachers, we need to provide opportunities for writing for different purposes. And Writer's Workshop provides the opportunity for students to have that free choice and not be bogged down with, it must look a certain way, it must be a certain topic, I have to worry about my spelling and punctuation. Writer's Workshop helps us to get through the writing kind of painlessly. It gives us that free choice we want. It gives us time to work together to come to a final copy, which we are publishing, the final piece of your Writer's Workshop. And so, and publishing is just, you know, how you complete it, celebrate, however you decide to say, this is how we wrap up this writing piece. And then, you know, at different points with writing, sometimes you do a science project and they have to write their research and write their hypothesis, and that's a different purpose for writing. So they don't have a choice in that topic. They don't have a choice in how it should look and the format. And that is fine. That's what our students need to understand. We write for different purposes. Sometimes I'm going to be very looking for that punctuation and correct spelling. Other times you're going to have the free choice just to write and let your ideas run wild. And then we'll go through the writing process to bring it to a final copy. So just pulling back, Writer's Workshop is that opportunity for free choice. So you definitely need to have that included as a piece of your writing, because that might be what helps to motivate them to be able to do the other parts that you're asking them to do when it comes to writing. So guys, questions about that? What are you thinking about Writer's Workshop? Let me hear from a couple of you. What have been your experiences with that, whether you engaged in it or observed it? Are you observing it now in your settings where you are? Just what do you guys think when it comes to using Writer's Workshop as a piece of your writing curriculum? Just hear from a couple of you before we get into small groups. Anybody jump in?
Well, I've never really liked writing. It's not my forte. I've always liked science and math better, so I guess I have like a not bad rep with it, but like not the fondest thing I want to do. But I'll do my best.
I think that's an important thing to recognize, and that's why we started with the writer's map, to really say, where am I on this writing journal? We understand that reading and writing literacy is the foundation for every subject that you'll be teaching in school. So we need to make sure that we're understanding it, feeling comfortable with it, and at least can pretend that we love it and like it and recognize its importance, because that's the only way our students will take it on as well. If we're saying, you know, I know we don't like writing, but now it's writing time and we'll just do our best and get through it, then that becomes ingrained in, you know, writing time, and I'm not excited about it. It's the same thing with reading, where sometimes we say, okay, we'll go read for a few minutes instead of doing what you want to do. And so reading becomes a punishment rather than, guess what, you get to read now. And so it's really the way that we're demonstrating that. So that's an important thing to recognize. I don't love writing. It's never been my forte, but what am I going to do to make my kids think that I love writing and make them love writing too? And you love science and math, so maybe that's your entry in, is doing that science and math, and writing comes as a component of that. So a lot of things to think about there. Who else, guys? Writer's Workshop experiences or observations of it, your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of like Eric. I was also never really a big fan of writing, but going through the writer's camp, I feel like she introduced so many strategies that made it a little bit more enjoyable, like things I never even thought about that actually helped. So I feel like it's very likely that we may have students that also don't really like writing, but having these resources in our little teacher toolbox really helps to get them more engaged, have more ideas, organize their writing better. So I'm really happy that we did that.
Good. And that's a great thing to point out, because I could see you in a couple of years. I'm not telling your students, I didn't used to like writing. I didn't used to be excited about it. But guess what? I found a lot of different ways to get started as a writer, and now I love it. You know, and that's the thing, is what is the path that we need to get on to motivate them and recognize that I need to have this skill in order to be successful throughout the different content areas. So we might not have all our kids saying, I love reading and writing, but hopefully they recognize, like, yeah, I need to know how to do that, and I need to be good at that in order to be good at everything else when it comes to class and school. So that your demonstration of that is the first step, especially for our younger students when they're emerging into it and forming their ideas on it. Anyone else want to jump in? Has anybody observed this yet this school year, either virtually or in person in your classrooms? Anybody getting started with Writer's Workshop? Okay, well.
I was just about to say, I haven't observed it yet, and I kind of think that's a little shocking. But I think it's because in my district, we only do class periods in 30-minute increments. So it's like teaching a lesson and getting them to participate in 30 minutes, and then the kids go about their way. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's challenging when you have that small amount of time to get something this big in. But hopefully, as the year progresses, you'll see how they're, you know, working to include the writing in some form or fashion, and Writer's Workshop, hopefully, at least with some of the primary grades. But what we've learned and what research shows us is that it's an excellent strategy to use when it's coming to helping students to understand the writing process, to engage in free writing and choice, and to have time to work with their peers rather than as the teacher being in charge. So you're just facilitating these opportunities, and then they kind of take over and they're in charge when it comes to Writers Workshop. So we're doing that same thing, guys, starting out today, brainstorming. And I'm just going to randomly assign you to Writers Workshop today, which is a little unusual but just with you guys being adult learners, it's different than if you were in a classroom and I would put you into specific groups. So you have your charge for your small group time. It shouldn't take you too long just to go through and give everybody an opportunity to kind of say, which genre did you most enjoy during writing summer camp and maybe why? Maybe it's something you discovered about yourself you weren't sure about, or maybe you just say, I've always liked writing stories about myself, so I love the narrative. That's what I'm going to stick with. You guys decide. And when we come back together, I'll say, which strategy did you select from beginning on page 90 all the way through the end, any of those that you like, all the way, 132 or something like that. So there's several to choose from. And then what you'll do before we come back together is do that strategy, engage in that activity that you selected, and begin a draft of the writing that you're going to begin writing about for Writers Workshop. So you have your charge. Let's see, I think I can put you in groups of 4. Yeah, 4 groups of 4, perfect number. So somebody came in to make it a group of 5. We were almost even. Okay, so in your small groups, I'll give you, let's see, 5, 10, I'll check on you at about 15 minutes, even though that should give everybody about 3 to 5 minutes to work, 15, 18 minutes or so. And then in once you are finished. Any questions about what you'll be doing in your small groups? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and split you up. Go to my breakout rooms. Okay, guys, and feel free to, I'll jump in